Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Millionaire By Morning podcast. We're here today with the guest by the name of Kristen Donnelly. She's a second generation co-owner of a family business, and using that experience is an expert on burnout prevention and recovery. Kristen is an award-winning 4 times TEDx speaker and international speaker, researcher, and educator. And she believes that burnout is a cultural condition, not an individual failing, and that every generation has gifts to give and things to learn from each other. So I want to welcome Kristen to the show today because I know a lot of us are concerned about burnout at this moment in time. Hello, Kristen.
Hello. Thank you so much for having me.
So awesome of you being here. This is a topic that we have not discussed, but I'm excited to discuss with you today. I see that you are an expert on the topic, and let's get into it. Can you tell us a little bit about let's start with the family business first and what that was like, and you growing up watching entrepreneurship and kind of taking that direction in life or as far as your career is concerned.
Yeah. My parents bought the company, the first company of the ones, it's grown to several, but bought the first company in 1991. I was 7, 8 years old, like depending on, and so it isn't as much that I watched entrepreneurship as I continually participated in it. Because as I joke, child labor laws do not apply to family businesses. And so we spent weekends. He bought an old factory and a failing company. So there was a lot of existing, not only IP, but like actual inventory. So we spent weekends, scrubbing bottles and sorting boxes and figuring things out. And I was brought up with the idea that the whole point of our family was to serve others. And that my father saw entrepreneurship as an opportunity to control our own way to serve others. And that we had, we had control over the time and the resources and everything else. And that's how I've always seen it. Our family has a mission statement to impact lives and create holistic wealth. And I've seen my father do that in his way throughout his entire career, and my brother and mine as well. And I took a very different path than manufacturing. It just was not my jam. It's not something I'm particularly talented at. My brother and my father are very good at figuring out how to make things work. And I'm very good at figuring out how people work, which are different skill sets. But I mean, vacations were still board meetings so that, we could fit them within the budget and the tax credits. And, my dad didn't stop working ever, really, except when we were on a cruise because his employees couldn't call him. He did not structure boundaries or time or rest very well because in his mind, entrepreneurship meant essentially working yourself to the bone. And so I saw like the real downsides of it as well as the real upsides of it. And it was always something that I just always felt really bad. Even as I got into my career years of people that went to work for, corporate jobs and like their lunch breaks were controlled. I've never understood that. It's never been part of my life. So yeah, this was normal for us. My younger brother and I, and we co-own the network of companies together, but this was very normal. That it didn't matter if it was 4:00 in the morning, if the alarm went off, our dad was in the car to go down and see what was going on. There was no one to tap in. There was no one higher. And now that we're living that, it was good training.
Okay. So you've actually lived it. You've been in the trenches with entrepreneurship. So I can see now that the topic that you're discussing as far as burnout is just the life that you led and seen actually. And so past the, first startup, you went into, I take it you went to, went to school after. And What was your mindset at that point? Did you know that you didn't necessarily want it to be in the family business, or that you just wanted to educate?
Oh no, I didn't want to ever come back. I don't know a ton of, I think it's probably a 50-50 split on kids that grow up in this world, that you want to come back and take it over. And then other of you are like, I would like to be as far away as possible. I always wanted to be involved in the business. I wanted to be on the board, or I wanted to be, because the legacy is very important to me. The mission statement's very important to me. But like day-to-day manufacturing did not have a ton of attraction to me. So no, yeah, I have an undergraduate degree in adolescent psychology. I wanted to work with teenagers, and I did. After college, I spent a year abroad in Northern Ireland, actually teaching sex ed to teenagers in high schools over there. Then I was given the opportunity to move back to the States and get 2 master's degrees at Baylor University. And then after that, went back overseas and did my doctorate in Northern Ireland. And it was kind of towards the beginning of my doctorate. I had just met my husband. So it was like 2013-ish. My brother had since come back from our dad had a thing where he really wanted us to work other places before we came home anyway. So my brother had been working other places, and he had just gotten home, and he said, I don't want to do this without you. Will you move back to America? Like, will you move to where we figured out how to do this together? And I emigrated back in 2015. And then for a lot of years, we just kind of kept figuring out how to do it and how to do it differently, what things to keep the same, because there are some things that were non-negotiables to us. So what do we keep the same and what do we shift? What do we do immediately? What do we do slowly? It was this really long, complicated, strategic conversation. And while we were doing that, we had a lot of conversations about burnout, because our dad, I can't, we all debate what the exact number is, but I think it is 5 minor cardiac events and 1 major one between like 1995 and 2016. And I just refuse to be that. My brother refuses to be that. My brother has 2 small children, and they are my world too. I love them. And when I look at them, at the idea of them having to go to hospitals when they're in middle school and visit one of us, like, that's not something I want them to do. And so I take all that knowledge. I take a lot of I grew up in the church, and women's conferences in the church in the 90s and aughts flipping loved to talk about burnout, and we didn't call it that, but that's what they talked about. And they would say the solutions were taking bubble baths or doing, long walks or getting more sleep. And I was like, well, I'm an insomniac. I have chronic pain and I hate bubble baths. So does that mean I just have to be in burnout? So I kind of carried that question with me for a long time. Then I lived in the UK and I lived in Northern Ireland, where their cultural priority is not productivity. Their cultural priority is family and togetherness in a way. And there's some real downsides to that. I mean, there's some real downsides, but there's some real upsides. And so then I moved back here, and I am utterly exhausted for the first 3 years I'm back. And I kind of sit up one day and say, oh, it's okay. This is a problem here. There's burnout everywhere in the world. Japan is statistically the most burnout culture if we take the measurement of someone taking their own life as the end of burnout. So Japan is the most burned out. We have a unique brand here that is so insidious we never talk about it. And that's kind of what I've realized over the last little bit. And my research partner, Aaron, and I have been working on this for a long time. But I just got really curious about how to not be my dad, and how to still create this place that is thriving and welcoming. And I'm incredibly proud of what we built here. I can talk about it for ad nauseum. But he never asked for help, and he did it alone, and all these kind of things. So how do I put practices in my own life to make sure that I never do that?
Practices and systems.
Mm-hmm.
So the topic that you speak on at this moment in time is a very popular topic, burnout. And I know it because on my end of the spectrum, I work in marketing. So I see it all the time with influencers and creatives and creators that although you're looking at just them do a TikTok or YouTube, they eventually get tired of it. And it is a lot of work. And because their particular person is the brand, that means that they have to show up every single day, all day. And so would you say that as far as this topic is concerned, that you've been on TEDx 4 times already. Would you say that you've seen an increase in speaking opportunities, or you're a well sought out speaker at this moment in time?
Not at this moment in time, but hopefully that changes. Whenever I do get to talk about it, I really love being able to also be this receiving space. Folks come up after and start telling us their burnout stories. And that's really special. Whether I'm alone or sometimes I do training with Aaron, I really count it as a privilege that folks see me as safe enough and us as safe enough that they could disclose these very complicated stories to us. So I'm very grateful for that.
Awesome. I don't know. I have not watched a complete TEDx of yours. I did start on one, and I'm going to go back and finish it. But what are your signature keynotes? What specifically are you speaking on?
Well, believe it or not, like really only one of them is a TED Talk. The other ones were I did them ages ago. I did them in 21 and 22. And so I did all 4 in 8 months. So it was all very like that period of my thinking. But now my signature keynotes are about burnout. That's a really big one. And the explanation as to why in America without burnout, yours or someone else's. It is just impossible. And then the other one is about multi-generational friction and spaces, and essentially that Gen Z isn't lazy and they're traumatized and confused, and how do we all work together when the world is so fractured and different. But I center that talk around technology and how different technologies have in fact impacted our generational senses of belonging. And when we have different generational senses of belonging and a workplace decides that everyone belongs on the terms of a, baby boomer, that means the other 3 might not be able to belong there. And so how do we take into account what the technology that we are comfortable with, whether it be dial-up AOL or I joke all the time with my mother that she used the Pony Express, whatever that technology is, how does it affect how we interact with people, but also how we think about ourselves and how we see the world. And I get to work with college students sometimes, and they're blown away when I say that my very first smartphone was in 2009 and I was in my 20s. They have no concept of that. The first time I watched a full YouTube video for pleasure and not education was during COVID. And that also blows their minds. But though, like when I was growing up, you watch network TV, Netflix was a revelation. And it changed how we all did things and all of those kind of things. So those are the 2. I talk a lot about burnout. Burnout for leaders, burnout for first responders, burnout for fill in the blank. And then I talk a lot about how to help generations understand each other better.
Well, can we touch on that subject just a little bit? How, being someone who looks at it from a psychological standpoint, how do Generation Z get along with Generation X and boomers? It seems as if there's no mutual respect for each other in those different sectors.
That's a choice, how do they do it? Well, in really simple terms that are not, I should say straightforward, that aren't simple, is you have to learn to listen to each other and you have to learn to ask questions. And so I talk to parents a lot. They're like, well, I don't know why my kid is doing this. I'm like, have you asked them? And if they say, I don't know, get creative, ask other questions around it. What are you actually curious about? Figure it out. Questions all tend to go over better than accusations. And so if you have a culture within your family of asking questions, if you ask the wrong questions, your kid tends to forgive you a little bit. And you guys can muddle through it together. There's lots of ways for successful communication between the generations. Millennials are kind of bridge. We kind of can talk to everybody fairly easily. That will change, I'm sure, when alpha comes into the workplace. But right now we're kind of bridgy, and we kind of can do everything. But I would say for boomers to keep this in mind, boomers and Xers to keep this in mind, that nearly every Gen Z you are talking to right now, so like 28 and down, had access to personal screens right in front of their faces before they were 15. Think about what your 12-year-old experience was like, and would you want it on the internet?
Right.
Think about all of your questions and weirdness and hormones. Who did you go to for them? Most likely you went to some sort of adult, whether it was a parent or an aunt, or they're going to YouTube. And for some of them, they're going to Pornhub. That's a really different world. So arrange your brain to give them that framework. You cannot hold people accountable to what you know that they don't. That's the death of any relationship. You can make sure they know it, but you can't hold them accountable to it first. It just doesn't, it's going to break relationship. Now, for Gen Z, what I would like them to know, because I'm a big believer, there's no victim and no hero here. Everybody is messy, and we all got to learn from each other. So what I often say to Gen Z is, you have to remember that we remember not having information in our, like, at our fingertips all the time. Life moved slower for us when we were teenagers, almost all of us. I had dial-up internet. Let me tell you what it was like posting a creative writing project when I was 14 onto AOL.com. Like, it's a different world. You guys write on Archive of Our Own with your thumbs on your phone, hit send, and it goes out everywhere. I had to do like drafts and like wait for my mother to be off the phone and like, all these kind of other things. Everything just moved slower. Also, I want them to remember that new things are scary no matter what age you encounter them at. Just technology isn't new for them, so it isn't really scary. Driving is new, so it's scary. College is new, so it's scary. For a lot of the rest of us, TikTok is new, so it's scary. You need to remember that new always means scary. New just might be different to different folks. And I ask them also to remember that the way that we were teenagers, all of the other generations, the way that we were teenagers, we were all teenagers before COVID. And COVID changed how they were teenagers. And I have discovered that when you're really honest, actually, with Gen Z and say, you're not crazy. You weren't taught this. You don't know this. Your school went from being I got creative thinking in school, and I got rhetoric and all of these things that I was forced to do. You got rote memorization. That's not fair to you. I have discovered that when you explain that clearly, they feel less stupid and overwhelmed, and they learn what questions to ask. And they learn that they can ask questions. They've just been taught that they get punished if they do. In most schools, you can't ask creative questions because that takes you away from the curriculum, which would take you away from the testing, which would take you away from the funding. And so not every school. I always get someone coming up to me and saying, that didn't happen in my school. I'm aware. I'm looking at all the data and all the patterns. It happened a lot of places. So kind of all of us need to have a little bit more honest conversations about what adolescence was like for us. One final example, and then I was working with a college baseball team, and this is a couple of years ago now, but still, like, they're all Gen Z. And I asked them two questions. One, I said, how many of your parents picked your classes for you? And 3/4 of them raised their hands. And I said, if I got my father on the phone right now, he could not tell you the topic of my PhD. And that is not a judgment of either one's, but please see how different that is.
Right.
And then the other thing I said is, how many of you have been through an active shooter drill? All of them raised their hands. And I said, I've never been in one. And a couple boys fell off their chairs. They were so shocked. So just remember, the worldview that you have as the whole truth, and that's what you think of in your head, isn't that. And we are very good about that in different kind of cultures. Like if I, talk to somebody here in America and I'm like, well, the world is different in Namibia. They're like, of course it's different in Namibia. But I'm like, well, the world is different for Gen Z. They get really pissed and judgy about Gen Z.
Oh, wow.
They're different cultures. We've got to treat them as that. And then I think just the fundamental thing, and I said at the beginning, so let me say it again, is we are all humans. We are all humans. We are different and messy and weird, and we can't communicate. And again, I'm going to say weird, but everyone you're talking to is just as weird as you are. And everyone you're talking to has just as many questions and needs as much grace and needs as much time to have fun and needs family just as much and all those kind of things. So if we can center the humanity in the person that we are talking to, that always helps.
That's a good way to put it. Center the humanity. You're right, because a lot of the time it's just judgmental. It's approaching it as if that person had the same experiences as you.
Mm-hmm.
I think about that a lot. I have a senior in high school right now, and sometimes it happened, in hindsight. But it's like, well, maybe I didn't approach that, correctly, because he's not me. He didn't grow up like I did. So I think about that a lot.
Yeah, I've always discovered that I'm sorry are two really holy words.
Really holy.
Mm-hmm.
If you can make them mean what they're supposed to mean.
Yeah, when you come in, they're not just like performative.
Right.
When you're really saying, hey, like I blew this call, a lot of good can come from that.
Right. I definitely agree. That's the second part. I wanted to get to that, Gen Z. A lot of people have questions about that area. But the first topic, you mentioned systems as far as burnout is concerned. Can you give us a screenshot of what those systems kind of look like? Not too detailed, but just screenshot.
For sure. I mean, we go into a whole lot of detail in our book, which is The Culture of Burnout. And if you literally just Google The Culture of Burnout and my name, the book will come up. So you see there on your screen the 4 R's, and basically, it's rest, rejuvenation, realignment, and reconnection, because we love alliteration. But fundamentally what that comes down to is that, I mean, here's the deal. We all slide into some level of burnout at some point, like almost against our will. Like it just happens because of America. Getting out of it and protecting ourselves against it in the future requires a lot of intentionality, like a lot of just being really, really clear. It does not require necessarily a whole rewrite of your life. I don't believe in big changes in your life. Your brain hates big changes. I believe in tiny changes. So when we talk about rejuvenation, we really want you to sleep. Rest. We really want you to sleep. I know that sounds annoying. I hate sleep. I find it to be a waste of time because I never wake up rested. I never wake up feeling better. And that's just my body. But I know that even if I don't wake up feeling better, the rest that my body does get is necessary. So I do what I can. I went to a sleep doctor and I got a sleep study done, and I bought the pillow that my chiropractor recommended and all those kind of things. So the second, and you hear that a lot with burnout, everybody just needs to get sleep. And like rest, whatever that means for you. So people think of that as vacations, and all that's great. Our point is that there's 3 more categories that you need to build systems around. So one of them is joy. Joy is a mandatory human element, and we tend to think of it as something for kids. But like, we need to play. We need to do things that make us happy. Things that might not make our families happy necessarily. Like I was talking to a woman at a conference last week, and I said, she was kind of saying she hasn't done anything for herself in years. And I was like, okay, well, what makes you what would make you happy? And she's like, I really love flowers. I was like, do you have a garden? She's like, no, because my kids need the backyard for their soccer practice. I said, cool, buy your favorite flower, put it in a pot, find it in your house, and spend 5 minutes a day looking at it. Like, that's what we mean, build up from there. I absolutely love sports, particularly baseball and hockey. So I carve out time to make sure that I watch those. I do not play them. We should not have me on skates. But like, I really love watching them. So then the third is realignment, which is your spiritual practice, whatever that is. Basically, part of preventing burnout is to remember that if you take a nap, the sun will still rise. And I'll have, moms come and say like, well, if I take a nap, my kids won't get fed. And my response is, well, we need to build in some systems where that's not true. But also, like, for right now, for tonight, for tomorrow, like, Uncrustables are fine. If your kid is over probably 8, they can probably make Kraft macaroni and cheese in some way, shape, or form. Like, we need to, like, perfect is the enemy of done. Perfect meals are the enemy of fed. So like, we need to kind of work with that. And then the last one, so I should say that all came from, explain this much more in the book, but the idea of reconnection and stopping and being intentional came from a lot of my friends and their Jewish practice of Sabbath and how they view Sabbath, which is a time to stop and remember that you are created, that you're not the one who created anything. And so we want to build that in a recentering, a realigning, a remembering. So if you don't have a spiritual practice, we recommend finding something where you feel connected to the universe and where you can remember that a lot of people have come before you. A lot of people will come after you. You are important and loved and all of those things, but the world literally does not require your power to run. Then the last one is reconnection, which is being with your people. It's not, being around, like, in proximity to people. It is being with your people. And your people, I always say, are the ones that can tell you who you are when you've forgotten. So if you build systems around that, and that sounds so clinical, I know, and it sounds so entrepreneurial to like do in your personal life. But I've found that humans actually really love structure. And socially and psychologically, we do really like structure. Even if we say we love chaos, we actually do kind of like structure, at least a little bit. And so pick a thing in those 4 categories. What do you struggle with the most? Pick that thing, dial it all down, come up with something you can do for 5 minutes a day, 5 minutes every other day, 5 minutes a week, whatever feels doable to you right now, do that. So maybe you're really, really terrible at rest and you need to sleep better. And so you hear constantly that you really need to like leave your phone downstairs because you shouldn't have it in there, but your phone's your alarm. So what are you supposed to do? Target has alarm clocks for like $6.99. So you go to Target, you get an alarm clock, you plug it in. Now, I have the puzzle of I need to listen to podcasts when I fall asleep. I still haven't solved that one. How do I do that without having my phone next to me? But we're working on that. But I have taken my alarm off my phone. And I got an alarm clock. That, like, kind of like the one I grew up with, where when I woke up, it would play like B101 in the morning, back in the day. But so pick a thing. And it can't actually be really big. It can't be really massive because your brain will reject it. You have to trick your brain into making changes. So come up with systems around rest, joy, calm, really, and friends.
Kristen, that sounds good. I can't wait to read the book. I want to ask you about America as a whole. America has this thing that we refer to as a hustle mentality. So you get, let's just say you're watching, motivational TikTok or motivational YouTube. There's a thing where it's like, wake up at 4 a.m., meditate, take a cold shower, read a chapter of a book, eat 8 protein bars and 5 eggs, and then go for a jog. And so by 6:30, you should be on the phone getting ready to make your first videos for TikTok. And then by 8 o'clock, you should be on the phone calling up customers and clients. And that's the only way you're going to succeed is the message. How do you feel about that? And how can we change that way of thinking?
We have a deep belief in this country that in order to be a good person, we have to work really hard. And most of the time, we believe that working hard means working more. We definitely believe it means working alone. And we definitely believe that sleep is for when you're dead. And we got all of those back in the 1600s with the first group of white folks who colonized and stayed, the Puritans. That's the theological system they brought over. It aligns really well with resource accumulation and capitalism. So it made people pretty wealthy, and they kind of became in charge of things. I am sure there is a study behind each thing you listed as to why that will help. None of them convince me that they're necessary. Now here, if any of that actually makes you happy and feel more powerful and feel more in control, rock on, please do them. If you need to pull a Gaston and eat like a ton of eggs, like have fun. It's your life. My real problem is when we begin to tell people they have to do this to be successful, just like you said at the end. They don't say, this is what works for me. They say, only this will work for you. And that's just marketing. That's not truth. That's not help. That's not any of those things. I like to think, very successful. I've got a couple postgraduate degrees. I own a company that I haven't run into the ground yet. Written a book, helped with from my friends, but still wrote a book. Like, I've done all these things. And I have done nothing you just listed. Nothing. I do get up around the same time every day. I do find that very important. A lot of studies say your body likes it better when you get up within the same kind of half an hour window every day. So I do that. Sometimes I get up before then because my sleep is terrible and I have awful chronic pain. But most of the time I forget breakfast. My doctors are still trying to get me to actually eat it. I get to work. I work really solid. I write really solid for the first 5 hours, 6 hours, depending on if I have a meeting. Then the rest of the day I do admin or meetings, depending. And then I go home and I'll eat a dinner that usually involves some sort of protein if my husband remembers to put it in there because he does all the cooking. I watch TV, I go and I read or I crochet and I go to bed. And I do all of that and still manage to have a pretty successful life. This kind of the story I tell a lot is my research partner, Aaron, and I did our PhDs almost at the same time. We both finished with the same result. We both finished with the same grade, the same everything. Erin would get up at like 7:30. She would sit, slowly eat her breakfast from like 8 to 9 or whatever. And she went physically to her office. She was there from 10 to 6 every single day. I woke up, rolled out of bed, made coffee, rolled back into bed, and wrote from bed for about 6 hours. And then I spent the afternoon solving problems, walking around my house, or sometimes even playing video games because that always helped unlock things in my brain. We both finished with the same grade. And so I think a lot more of what makes you successful is what works for you. Because what is success? What is success? If you are achieving it and you are exhausted, that means somebody else is too. And I don't know if that's success. If you are achieving it and you are not exhausted, other people definitely are exhausted. And you got to think about all that. And then at the very base of it, I'm sure you've talked about this on your show. I haven't been able to watch the entire back catalog, but like it all depends on what success means for you.
Definitely.
Like if you're marking your success by your bank balance, then that's a different, I don't mark my success that way. So we're going to be having a different conversation, and it's going to involve a lot less eggs, I think, and possibly a lot less running, because that just sounds exhausting. But again, chase your joy, man. If that's the system that works for you, fantastic. Just don't make it mandatory for me.
That's right. I can agree with that. I can agree with that because I'm more of the 4-hour work week type of guy. You know, I'm like you. I have so many use cases and examples of growing up where I can literally just watch someone do things with ease and make the same grade, make the same amount of money, make the same amount of hoops in the basketball goal. Like Allen Iverson said, why are we even talking about practice? Like, I did this as a pro. You know, I know what I'm doing. So why are we even discussing practice, coming to practice? So I just think it's different strokes for different folks. And that's, you know, whatever system works for you to achieve, like you just said, the type of success that you want. I have 3 grandbabies, and they're like from 6 all the way down to just turn 1. I can't see me doing anything other that could make me happier than spending time with them. There's no amount of money, dollar, trip, anything, and that's success to me. Like having them around. And so it all comes down to, you know, of course, I want to do things for them. I want to be able to send them through college and help them, you know, throughout their life. So I have to do what I need to do for that reason. But other than that, I can't, like you say, I just can't be continuing running around around the block. I'd rather spend time with them instead of doing that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I agree. So what's next for you, Kristen? What do you have in store for your long-term goals or maybe even short-term goals?
Well, we are in the next couple weeks or months. I don't know when this is coming out. But early in 2026, we are releasing a leadership version of the Culture of Burnout that is much shorter and much more focused on helping leaders move through creating a culture for their folks that prevents burnout or encourages recovery. It's based on the last 2 years of trainings that we've done with leaders and hearing them ask us questions and hearing what they've done and what they're doing. So we're really excited to release that. And then we're working on our second big book, as we call it, which will be about generations and technology. And I'm very excited about that in terms of kind of my other hats and my roles in the manufacturing side of things. Lots of exciting things are coming and lots of things are changing. And so I just really look forward to being, you know, boots on the ground and kind of getting as it is and what it looks like. So got some fun stuff coming down the pike, but I think the most concrete stuff is those 2 books.
Awesome. I did look at your website. It's an awesome website. It presents you as an expert, as a speaker. With this website, with the website along with it, what are you doing to market yourself and put yourself out there so you can be on more stages in front of more people with your messaging?
That's a great question. I'm applying to everything that I can. Other than that, getting on stages as a speaker is incredibly difficult. And there's a lot of wonderful, wise people that are competing for the same stages as I am. And so we just plug forward and trust that the stage that we're supposed to be on, I'll be on and go forward from there. I have found that there's a lot of people that want to tell you how to make a lot of money speaking. And really what they want to do is just take a lot of your money. And so I kind of craft together what I think works the best, always open to more suggestions. And in the meantime, I'll just keep plugging away.
There you go. All you can do. And where, if someone wants to even hear you speak, want to purchase your book, How do they follow you? How do they get in touch with Kristen?
All of the information is at drkristenspeaks.com, and you spell my first name with an E-N. So drkristenspeaks.com.
Okay. All right. Well, Dr. Kristen, I want to thank you for coming on the Millionaire by Morning show and giving us some insight into burnout. This was an awesome conversation. Like I say, you're the first person to speak on it, and you gave us systems to work with. So I hope people go out and purchase your book and follow you on your social media channels and look into even booking you as a speaker. That would be awesome if there's anyone that's out there that would like to have an expert on the topic of burnout on your stage. Thanks again, Kristen. And to anyone out there listening, just continue to make moves and make money so you can make meaningful memories. We'll speak to you next time.